My friends, I want to speak to you today about something that touches every heart, something that troubles the soul and weighs down the spirit, the waiting. We live in a world that moves fast. We expect things instantly. We want answers now, solutions today, breakthroughs this very moment. But life doesn't always work that way. No, life has a way of making us wait. Prayers seem unanswered. Doors appear closed. The road stretches long before us. And sometimes we wonder if God has forgotten us. But I am here to tell you today, He has not forgotten you. He has not turned away. He has not abandoned you. Your blessings will come, but they will come at the right moment. God's timing is perfect. You see, we often think we know best. We look at our lives, we measure time by our own understanding, and we say, Lord, I need this now. I can't wait any longer. We grow anxious, impatient, restless. We start to doubt. We start to question, why, Lord? Why the delay? Why am I still in this place, still facing this struggle, still waiting for my blessing? But listen to me. God does not work according to human clocks. He does not follow human schedules. He is not bound by the constraints of time the way we are. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He sees the whole picture. He knows the plans He has for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Think about Abraham. God made him a promise. He told him that he would be the father of many nations. But did that promise come the next day? No. Abraham had to wait years, decades even, before he saw that promise fulfilled. And in the waiting, there were struggles, there were doubts. He tried to take matters into his own hands, but God's plan was greater. At just the right time, when it seemed impossible, God gave Abraham a son. Or consider Joseph. He had a dream that one day he would be in a position of great authority, that even his own family would bow before him. But before that dream came true, Joseph was betrayed, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. For years he suffered. For years he waited. But in the right moment, in God's perfect time, he was lifted up. He was placed in the position God had prepared for him all along. And what about Moses, called to lead his people out of Egypt? Yet before he could step into that calling, he spent 40 years in the desert. 40 years. Some of you have been waiting for a few months, a few years, and you're ready to give up. But Moses waited 40 years before God said, now is the time. Now you are ready. My friends, God does not delay. He does not withhold good things from His children. He is always working, always moving, always preparing the way. But we must learn to trust Him. We must learn to wait in faith, because when the time is right, when the season is ready, when your heart is prepared, God will open the doors and no man will be able to shut them. But waiting is hard, isn't it? The enemy whispers lies in our ears. He says, God has forgotten you. Your prayers don't matter. He's blessing others, but not you. And if we're not careful, we start to believe it. We start to lose hope. But I want to remind you today, the enemy is a liar. God has not forgotten you. He is not ignoring you. He is shaping you, molding you, preparing you for the blessing He has in store. And when it comes, it will be greater than you ever imagined. Think about a farmer. He plants the seed in the ground. He waters it. He cares for it. But he cannot make it grow overnight. There is a process. There is a season. The roots must take hold. The sprout must push through the soil. The sun and rain must do their work, and in due time, the harvest comes. The same is true for you. You may not see it now, but your blessing is growing. Your breakthrough is taking root. God is working beneath the surface. And at the right moment, in the perfect season, your blessing will come forth. Some of you are praying for healing. You've cried out to God, but the pain persists. The sickness lingers. You wonder, where is God in all of this? But I tell you, He is with you. He is strengthening you. He is teaching you to trust Him. And when the time is right, healing will come. Some of you are waiting for a financial breakthrough. You've worked hard. You've given faithfully, yet you're still struggling. But God is your provider. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He knows your needs, and He will supply them. Not always when you expect, but always on time. Some of you are waiting for restoration in your family. Broken relationships, heartaches, divisions that seem impossible to mend. But let me remind you, we serve a God of reconciliation. He is the God who heals wounds, who softens hearts, who brings prodigals home. Keep praying. Keep believing. At the right moment, God will restore. My friends, do not grow weary in the waiting. Do not lose heart. Do not give in to doubt. The enemy wants to steal your faith, but stand firm. Hold on to the promises of God. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." Waiting on God is not wasted time. It is preparation time. It is strengthening time. It is the time when your faith is refined, your trust is deepened, and your spirit is made strong. So today I urge you, trust in God's timing. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. He knows what He is doing. And when the time is right, He will make it happen. Your blessing is coming. Your breakthrough is near. Your season of waiting is not in vain. Hold on to hope. Keep the faith. Trust in God's perfect timing. And when He moves, when He opens the door, when He pours out the blessing, you will look back and say, it was worth the wait. There is something deep within us that struggles with waiting. We want to see results. We want to see progress. We want to see the fulfillment of our prayers immediately. But God's ways are not our ways. His timing is not our timing. What may seem like a delay to us is never a delay to Him. He is always on time. The Bible tells us that God makes everything beautiful in its time. That means there is a set time, an appointed time for your blessing, for your breakthrough, for your answered prayer. Think about David. He was anointed as king when he was just a young shepherd boy. The prophet Samuel poured oil over his head and declared that he would be the next king of Israel. But did David go straight to the throne? No, instead he went back to the fields, back to tending sheep. And after that he spent years running from King Saul, hiding in caves, facing battles, enduring hardship. He must have wondered at times, Lord, you called me, you anointed me, but why am I still in this place of struggle? But God was preparing him. God was shaping his character, strengthening his faith. And when the time was right, when David was ready, he took the throne. And God's promise was fulfilled. You may have received a promise from God. You may know deep in your heart that He has something great in store for you. But right now, you're in the waiting season. Right now, it feels like nothing is happening. But don't be discouraged. Your waiting is not wasted. Your waiting is a part of the process. God is building something in you. He is preparing you for what is ahead. If he gave you the blessing too soon, you might not be ready for it. If he answered your prayer too quickly, you might not appreciate it the way you should. Think about a child who asks his father for a car. The father knows that one day his child will be ready for it, but not yet. The child must first learn responsibility. He must grow, he must mature, he must be prepared. The father does not withhold the blessing because he wants to deny the child, but because he loves him. He wants what is best for him. He knows the right time. And when that time comes, the father will gladly give him what he has asked for. God is the same way with us. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows what is best for us. He knows when we are ready, and at just the right time, he will release the blessing. He will open the door. He will make the way. But until then, we must trust him. We must believe that he knows what he is doing. Some of you may feel like you've been waiting forever. You've prayed, you've fasted, you've believed, but nothing seems to be changing. You may be asking, Lord, when? When will my breakthrough come? When will my prayers be answered? But I want to tell you today, keep trusting, keep waiting, keep believing. God has not forgotten you. Your answer is coming. Your blessing is on the way. And when it comes, it will be greater than you imagine. Look at the story of Lazarus. When he was sick, his sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word to Jesus saying, Lord, the one you love is sick. They expected Jesus to come right away. They expected him to heal Lazarus before it was too late. But Jesus delayed. He did not come immediately. And in that delay, Lazarus died. To Mary and Martha, it seemed like all hope was lost. It seemed like Jesus had come too late. But Jesus was never late. He arrived at just the right time. And when he did, he performed a greater miracle than they had even prayed for. He didn't just heal Lazarus. He raised him from the dead. You may feel like your situation is dead. You may feel like the opportunity has passed, like there is no more hope. But I want to remind you today, God is never late. He is always on time. And when he moves, he will do something greater than you ever expected. God's delays are not denials. Sometimes he says, wait. Sometimes he says, not yet. But that does not mean he is saying no. It simply means he is working behind the scenes. He is aligning things in your favor. He is preparing people, places, and circumstances for you. And when the time is right, he will make it happen. Think about the birth of Jesus. The people of Israel had been waiting for the Messiah for generations. They had been praying, hoping, believing, and for centuries it seemed like nothing was happening. But the Bible tells us that in the fullness of time, God sent his Son. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late, but at the perfect time. If God could orchestrate the birth of the Savior at just the right moment in history, don't you think he can take care of your needs? Don't you think he can work out the details of your life? Don't you think he knows exactly when to bring your blessing? But while you wait, be faithful. Serve him where you are. Worship him in the waiting. Trust him in the process. Because every moment, every delay, every unanswered prayer is part of the greater picture he is painting. Some of you are waiting for a spouse. You've been praying, hoping, believing for the right person to come into your life, and it feels like everyone around you is getting married, starting families, moving forward while you remain in the same place. But let me encourage you today, God has not forgotten you. He is preparing the right person for you, and he is preparing you for them. And when the time is right, he will bring you together in a way that is beyond anything you could have planned. Some of you are waiting for your ministry to grow, for your dreams to take off, for doors to open in your career, and it feels like nothing is happening. But don't despise the small beginnings. Don't overlook the preparation season. God is working. He is strengthening you, equipping you, molding you. Remember, God is never in a hurry. He is never rushed, but He is always on time. He is the God of divine appointments. He is the God of perfect timing. And when He moves, everything will fall into place. So do not be discouraged. Do not lose heart. Your blessing is coming. Your breakthrough is near. Your prayers are being answered, even if you cannot see it yet. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. Hold on to His promises. Stand firm in your faith. Keep praying, keep believing, keep trusting. Because when the time is right, God will do what He has promised. And when He does, you will see that His timing was perfect all along. When we look at our lives, we often see only the immediate circumstances. We see the struggles, the delays, the unanswered prayers, and we begin to question God's plan. But God does not see things the way we do. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows what is best for us, and He knows the exact moment when to release His blessings. His timing is perfect, and we must learn to trust Him even when we do not understand. Many times in Scripture, we see people who had to wait, and not just for a short time, but for years, even decades before they saw the fulfillment of God's promises. But in every case, God was faithful. He did not fail them, and He will not fail you. Take Hannah, for example. She longed for a child. Year after year she prayed, she wept, she cried out to God, and it seemed as though heaven was silent. She watched as others received their blessings, as other women bore children while she remained barren. But in due time, God answered her prayer, and He didn't just give her any child, He gave her Samuel, a mighty prophet of God. If He had answered her prayer earlier, Samuel would not have been born at the appointed time, and he would not have fulfilled the role God had prepared for him. That is why we must trust God's timing. He is not just giving you any blessing. He is preparing the right blessing, the best blessing, the one that fits perfectly into His plan for your life. If He seems to be delaying, it is not because He has forgotten you, but because He is aligning everything perfectly. Some of you are in the waiting season, and it is hard. You see others moving ahead. You see people getting the things you have been praying for. And the enemy whispers in your ear, God has forgotten you. He doesn't care. He's blessing everyone else, but not you. But that is a lie. God has not forgotten you. He is working behind the scenes, preparing everything for your good. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark because a flood was coming, but it didn't rain immediately. It didn't rain for years. Can you imagine how Noah must have felt? People must have mocked him, questioned him, laughed at him, but Noah kept working, kept building, kept trusting, and at the right moment the rain came. Some of you have been building, you have been faithful, you have been trusting, but you have not yet seen the rain. I want to tell you today, do not give up, do not stop, keep going, because when the time is right, God will send the rain. We often ask God for blessings, but we do not realize that blessings come with responsibility. Some blessings require maturity. Some blessings require character. And God in His mercy will not give us something before we are ready for it. Look at the Israelites. They were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, but they did not enter immediately. They spent 40 years in the wilderness. Why? Because God was preparing them. He was teaching them to trust Him. He was shaping their faith. If He had taken them into the promised land too soon, they would not have been ready to handle it. The same is true for you. The delay is not a punishment. It is not a denial. It is preparation. God is getting you ready for what He has in store. And when the time is right, He will bring you into your blessing. Some of you have been praying for a financial breakthrough. You have been faithful in giving, faithful in working, yet you are still struggling. But do not lose heart. God sees your faithfulness. He sees your obedience, and He will provide. But He is also teaching you to trust Him as your provider. He is showing you that your security is not in money, but in Him. And when the time is right, He will open the doors of provision in a way that you never expected. Some of you are waiting for a healing. You have prayed, you have believed, and yet the sickness remains. You wonder why God has not answered. But let me remind you, God's timing is perfect. Sometimes the healing is immediate. Sometimes it comes over time. And sometimes God is doing a deeper work in you, strengthening your faith, drawing you closer to Him. Do not be discouraged. Your healing is in His hands, and at the right moment it will come. Some of you are waiting for restoration in your family. Broken relationships, pain, division. You have prayed, you have tried, and nothing seems to change. But let me tell you, God is a God of reconciliation. He is working in hearts, softening, changing, preparing, and in the right time, He will bring restoration. Waiting is not easy, but waiting is necessary, because in the waiting, God is strengthening you. He is increasing your faith. He is teaching you to rely on Him and not on your own understanding. Think about Peter. He was a fisherman when Jesus called him. But Jesus did not immediately send him out to preach. He spent time with him, walked with him, learned from him. Jesus was preparing him, and when the time was right, Peter stood up on the day of Pentecost and preached. And 3,000 people were saved. If Peter had stepped into ministry too soon, he would not have been ready. The same is true for you. God is preparing you. And when the time is right, He will release you into your purpose. You trust. You worship. You keep praying. You stay faithful. You do not give up. The Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." Being still does not mean doing nothing. It means trusting Him, resting in Him, believing that He is working even when you cannot see it. Joseph was in prison for years, but he remained faithful. He did not give up. He kept his heart right. And when the time was right, God lifted him up. David was in the wilderness for years, but he did not turn away. He remained faithful. And when the time was right, God placed him on the throne. You may be in a season of waiting. You may be in a place where nothing seems to be happening. But do not lose faith. Your blessing is coming. Your breakthrough is near. God is not limited by time. He is not bound by circumstances. What seems impossible to you is nothing for Him. He can open doors no man can shut. He can make a way where there is no way. He can turn your situation around in an instant. But He will do it at the right moment. And when He does, you will look back and see that His timing was perfect all along. God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are greater than our thoughts. When we think he is silent, he is actually working. When we think he has forgotten us, he is preparing something far better than we imagined. Every blessing, every breakthrough, every answered prayer has an appointed time, and no force in heaven or on earth can stop it when that time comes. Look at Abraham. God gave him a promise that he would be the father of many nations, but years passed, and still he and Sarah had no child. They grew older, and in the natural, it seemed impossible. Sarah even laughed when she heard the promise, but God was not limited by their age, by time, or by human reasoning. When the time was right, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, just as God had promised. Some of you have promises from God that seem impossible. You have dreams that feel out of reach. But let me remind you today, if God said it, he will do it. If he promised it, he will bring it to pass. It does not matter how long it takes. It does not matter what obstacles are in the way. God's word never fails. Sometimes we try to rush the process. We try to make things happen in our own strength. But when we do, we end up frustrated, weary, and disappointed. Instead of forcing things, we need to surrender. Instead of striving, we need to trust. When Jesus performed his first miracle at the wedding in Cana, the wine had run out, and Mary told the servants to do whatever Jesus said. He told them to fill the jars with water. It did not make sense. It did not seem logical. But as they obeyed, the water turned into wine. Not just any wine. That is what God does. He saves the best for last. He makes all things beautiful in his time. And if you trust him, if you wait on him, if you remain faithful, you will see his hand move in ways that will leave you in awe. My friends, I want to leave you with this. God's timing is always perfect. No matter how long you have been waiting, no matter how discouraged you may feel, do not lose heart. What he has spoken over your life will come to pass at the right moment. The delays, the disappointments, the unanswered prayers are not signs that God has forgotten you. They are part of his divine plan. He is shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for the blessings he has in store. So keep the faith, keep trusting, keep walking in obedience. Do not let doubt steal your joy, and do not let impatience lead you to step outside of God's will. What he has promised is coming, and when it arrives, it will be far greater than anything you could have imagined. You will look back and see that every moment of waiting was worth it. Trust in his timing, rest in his promises, and know that your blessing will come at the right moment, because God never fails and he is always on time.